Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. To subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com.
Hello, this is episode 4 of the Wisdom Circle with my friend Tony Ponturo. I'm Ray Warren. We are enjoying getting to know a lot of people, talking about different aspects of life, career, anything. There's really no subject that we're not going to wind up tackling. We've had some great guests already, from Toyota to a graduate student at Northwestern to the WTA or USTA. Correct, Tony? USTA?
USTA.
That was a long time ago. So, today's guest, who we'll bring on in a few minutes, is Eva Mejicanos. Eva is the Director of Sports Communication at Telemundo Sports. She's got a big job, Olympics in July and Premier League after that, and World Cup in 2026 in the U.S., so I can't wait to check in with Eva and see how things are going. Today we're going to talk about navigating a career in 2024. Tony and I looked back at our storied past, and we found that in the business world, which isn't to say that Tony did some great teaching at Columbia and NYU. I'm on the board at York College, so it's not like we haven't done anything since stepping away from the business world, but we're looking at that because that's what we think our audience would be most interested in. Over 6 years, I've had 5 jobs, 4, 8, 14, 5, 15 years. According to 2024 LinkedIn study, the average American worker changes jobs 12 times with an average of 4 years at each job. And 65% of American workers are actively seeking new full-time responsibilities. So it kind of started with the Great Resignation, and there are stats on that, but we don't want this to be a stat show. But it kind of all started around the pandemic, where people got used to working at home. We're going to talk about that, if not today, and we've talked and we'll continue to talk about the hybrid workplace. And I think it's just very fluid. I think it's a way people get promoted, a way people make more money. The world has changed. There's not a lot of gold watches going out to someone who's been at a place for 10 or 25 years. So, Tony, why don't you jump in and give us your take on everything like that?
Well, like you, I started as an NBC page, worked at 3 advertising agencies, and then 26 years at Anheuser-Busch. So I think that makes 5. Not too many people work 26 years at any company these days.
Did you get a watch? Did you get a watch?
No, we got bought out, and
not a bad way to go. You could have bought a watch.
Equity, really we'll incent you to take a 2-year package, and we really don't want any of you all anymore. So but that's for another show. But what's interesting is what I call the real Anheuser-Busch, the old Anheuser-Busch. August Busch III, our CEO, would always say to me on my review, Ponturo, I bet you can go to New York and make a lot more money, but I think you like it here. And I would say to him, respectfully but boldly, I like it here because you do pay me reasonably well, you empower me, and you respect what I do, and I know I'm appreciated, right? I said, if any of those things change, then probably I would look for other opportunities. So it's incumbent, and I think we'll hear from Eva a little bit about this as well. It's incumbent for the company and the employee to have open communication about, because I'm hearing from a lot of young people, I don't think my bosses appreciate me, and I don't get enough really pats on the back. And so that tends to get people to leave if they think they're good, and they are good, to find someone who does appreciate their work. So that's, hopefully one of the things that companies today, sort of on the same topic, a quick aside, and then we'll move on, is at Anheuser-Busch, we didn't have any employment contracts, and I know you and your several jobs would have an employment contract. And on reflection, I said, what's good about that, because I always felt left out because a lot of my friends working at a network or at a league all had contracts for 3 years or 5 years or whatever it was. But with no contract, it was up to me to perform every day, right? And it was up to the company to make sure I wanted to stay every day to work. So it was sort of a commitment that didn't have to be on a piece of paper. So I realized that in a way it kept us both honest and sort of leaning forward. So um, there's a lot obviously to our careers, and the human side of it, which I know we've talked a lot in the first three episodes. And quickly, we want to thank those. We're tracking those that are following us. We appreciate it. It is more than
We have your address.
yeah, it is more than Ray and I and our families watching. We would encourage that keep us not only smarter but sort of honest. We have our website, the Wisdom Circle. Give us an email. Say, I like what you're doing. We don't like what you're doing. We wish you were doing more of this or less of that. So, communicate to us. Or you can do it on LinkedIn, and we'll find it. So anyway, we want to keep making this better. This is only episode 4, and hopefully there's going to be a lot more.
That's a great point. Yeah, no hard feelings, no harm, no foul. We just want the truth. And, when someone said to me once, when you get a job of any authority, you need to surround yourself with people who tell you the truth. And a lot of people don't really want to hear the truth. And we'll leave it at that. And then recently, interesting week. Again, the Wisdom Circle, and we talk about life and coaching and things that go on. And Tony, want your perspective on both of those things, because you have more Italian than me, but we both have enough to spark to things. Is in 1 week, Willie Mays, one of the great ball players of all time, died at 93 years old. People say, "Oh, he had a good run," and I always feel like, boy, I don't know how Willie felt about that at the last day. It was like, "Oh, I had a good run." It's like, it's a sad day, and I guess a happy day if he was in pain or just not enjoying life. But certainly the passing was noted, and it was on the same day that Paul McCartney turned 82. And so that's inspiration for me. I look to, someone was telling me how they could feel old if they wanted to. And I'm like, look at Mick Jagger, look at Pete Townsend, look at Paul McCartney. These are the people that inspire me. The ones who are out there touring, playing songs they played 60 years ago. And so again, that's life, right? Willie Mays on the way out, Paul McCartney, 82. And just, it was a day. It was a day of notability, in my opinion. Tony, what do you got?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was interesting to watch a lot of the commentators, across the various networks talk about, how Willie Mays was their, boyhood idol, and how important it was, and what an inspiration he was, and really so undervalued. I was watching something, and of course, dollars. I was watching actually David Letterman interviewed Charles Barkley, and he said, we were making a couple $1,000,000, which is still a lot of money, versus Steph Curry making $50 million. And so I'm sure Willie Mays maybe he got up to $100,000 a year versus
Right.
What the players make today, but such an example, and the privilege, it's tough with athletes because they almost have to reinvent themselves if they want to continue to be involved. And I'm sure Willie did a lot of community things and advising. I think he did some coaching with the Mets for a while. But these bands like McCarthy and the talent, you still have great work. You still can do great work. And people still like to attach a little bit to traditions and things they remember and continue to learn from them. And I think, maybe this is a little bit too much on the nose, but it's a little bit what we're trying to do, particularly the young people, which is, we want to keep evolving and learning and bringing impact, and hopefully someone can learn from it. I remember I had an assistant at Anheuser-Busch, and her daughter came in to her one day and said, that Paul McCartney of Wings used to be on the Beatles. She was just making that connection.
There you go.
So
Ay.
it's fun to just keep learning, evolving, appreciating, and maybe even put in the back of your mind, why are these people so revered, and learn something from it, as we all, as we always kid, we all hope to get old, right? Because that's better than the alternative, right? So we're all going to get there. So we can learn
Yep.
from those that did.
Yep. Well, what I love about it, and we'll bring Ava on in a minute or two, is the way that some of those folks are still writing new music. Stones just came out with a new album. McCartney's always writing, and then people go to the concert and they just want to hear the greatest hits. And I was hearing someone talking about, I owe them the right to listen to some of their new stuff. They're artists. They're not done. And to just want them to play their top 10, that's not really fair to them as an artist. And then last night, Rick Nelson came on. He wrote a song called The Garden Party, where he was at Madison Square Garden. It was a reunion. There was a bunch of people there. And, everybody wanted to hear his hits. And he didn't want to play any of them. But it's like, I gave him Mary Lou. And if I have to just play the songs I've written already, I'd rather drive a truck. So I think respecting art and respecting growth and always working to grow, as Tony and I have said, on ourselves. And we need the help of younger folks to keep us relevant. And we bring stuff that we've been down a lot of trails. We've covered a lot of territory. So hopefully we can have some great exchange. Tony, unless you have something to add to that, which would be fine.
Let's move on to Ava. Let's learn a little bit something.
All right, let's go. Enough. All right. So Eva Mejicanos is with us today, and it is my pleasure. I loved working with Eva. Man, she made me look good and smart. And we had two very, very successful World Cups together. So she's a dynamo. And Eva, whenever you're ready, come on and say hi. Here we are with Eva Mejicanos. My partner in crime for a couple of World Cups. We did some great work together. Really had a wonderful time working with her in Moscow and Doha and in between Olympics and the Olympics that no one went to in Tokyo in 2021. All sorts of fun stuff. So, Ava, say hello. And I think it'd be great if everyone could hear a little bit about your background. And then, I've got a question for you. We always do.
Well, thank you, Ray. It's nice to see you, Tony. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. This is great. I'm excited to have this conversation. I think I don't often talk much about career and growth, nor do I have access to really pick someone's brain, particularly both of you guys, right? So thank you for having me. As you said, Ray, we've worked together. I'm currently the director of communications for sports here at Telemundo Deportes. I've had the great opportunity of doing 2 World Cups with Ray, Moscow and Doha. I am on my way to the Olympics. Between those two, I worked at Inter Miami and the Super Bowl. So actually, Super Bowl 100 that shut down the world, right? and then Inter Miami, team that funny enough, it didn't take off. I remember it was March 14th, 2020. It was going to be the inaugural game here in Miami, and everything shut down on the 17th. So we never got to have that game. It was a very interesting and cool thing. I mean, looking back at it, right? It's an incredible thing to have experienced. And then, previously I was a agency comms person, and one thing led to another. I joined an agency, pitched ESPN account, and I suddenly became the sports girl. So it wasn't like I chose sports. It kind of just happened, and then it was an opportunity after the other, and a lot of it I think was the right time, the right attitude, the work ethic, but really it wasn't exactly paid. Like I didn't think it wasn't very specifically intentional, or it's not something that I thought I would end up doing, and only only in like the last couple of years that I would say that it's been a more intentional effort, right? It's been a more of a thing that I'm pursuing, and something that now I'm committed to sports and sports broadcasting in general. So yeah,
That's amazing, and it goes right.
A lot about me, actually.
Right? No, everybody wants to know, but it does go to the thing Tony and I have talked about, which is if you think you know where your career's headed, you really don't. Just follow passion, and that story is almost like we did not rehearse that. For those of you listening or hearing us or watching, great background. All right, so I have a question. I don't know if you have any, Tony. I said I would prepare one. Eva,
No,
I know you do.
You go first. I don't like that, but
oh, okay. All right, good. Well, I'll go first, but we do want to hear as many questions as you have, Eva. If it's one or two or three, we want to get to.
I've got a few.
All right, good. So after working with you for a few years and you prepping me and giving me what we're talking about and how we want to position it and what's going on in the rest of the company that will tie this in, and talking to the reporter or the panel runner, here's, blah, 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 and you were so good at it. How does it feel to be the subject of our conversation today? You're it.
Short answer, awful. I think it was. It's funny because you're right. There's so much care and so much work that goes into that part of the job, right? When you're briefing, you're creating the briefs, you're setting up time to go over it. You're kind of going back and forth with the tone. You're thinking about who's the best person to deliver it, or what are the things that I need to look out for because my speaker, my spokesperson happens to be, whatever they little like antic that they might have, right? So all of that goes into this big process that it's not the same when you do it for yourself, or it makes you think about it a little bit like, oh, wait, I'm in the right job. I like prepping other people. I don't like to prep myself, and I don't want to be in front of a camera, and I don't want to hear myself either. But I do want to hear my words and somebody else is like delivering them.
That's
do
great.
love to sit there and listen to an interview and be like, yes, that's it. There you go. That's great. You got it in there. So I don't know. I think for me particularly, it made me realize, like a very reflective kind of moment for me, made me realize, yeah, this is the kind of job that I want. And I like being behind the scenes, and I like prepping others. Maybe that means that eventually I do a teaching job, but it's awful. Yeah, back to where we started. It's awful.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah, that's good. Anyway, sort of taking off on that, and what I know you in our green room listening to what Ray and I talked about, you sort of have an interesting perspective. One is you were at Telemundo. You then, as I understand it, went to the Super Bowl committee in Miami, then to the football club, and then back to Telemundo. So for our audience, what triggered you to feel comfortable taking that leap first from Telemundo, to the Super Bowl committee, which could be obvious, but maybe not. And then the second part of the question, when a lot of people leave a big corporation, corporations get sort of snooty about it and say, okay, you're leaving us, have a good life. But with you, they embraced you, Telemundo embraced you coming back. So why do you, how did you leave it the first time to that they said, we really want Eva back now that she's interested to come back into our fold?
That's a really good question. I would say that the jumping in those years, the series that we just kind of went over, right? Telemundo for World Cup, Super Bowl and club, and then back to Telemundo. Part of it wasn't necessarily my choice. I did not have the role here available. So I was filling in for my predecessor, Gabby. She was out on maternity leave right for World Cup. So it was an insane opportunity for me, right? But it could come to an end, and I always knew that. I think, the company knew how much I loved my time here. I worked, it was great working with everybody. I built incredible relationships in a very short period of time. I was really I was fully devoted, and had there been the opportunity to stay, I would have. But the role that was then offered was not exactly right, and the stars aligned. Super Bowl's coming to town. It was, it was late fall when after World Cup, the host committee was staffing up, and I had worked with the head of marketing at the host committee back in 2013, 2012. She was at Diageo, and she called me. She said, "Hey, I don't know if you're still at Telemundo." She had no idea that I was kind of, I had to either take a different role outside of sports, which at that point I had already figured it out. No, I've got something going on here. I'm sticking to sports, right? So she called me and said, "We've got a position. We have a lot of work. It's Super Bowl. We don't have a full staff yet. Would you come and join us?" So the stars aligned. Timing was perfect. Then Super Bowl's done, and there's this new team in my hometown, professional team in my hometown, about to launch. And I thought, when will I ever launch a professional team? And when will I ever have the opportunity to launch a professional team in my hometown, right? So that was, again, timing, the right, having the right relationships, building those relationships, nurturing those relationships, and just, and I think it wasn't so much about going out of my way to have these relationships, but rather doing a good job, enjoying your work, being honest, being genuine, and really, again, doing if doing the best you can, delivering, your best quality work always. And that has always worked for me, I think. So that was, and then when Telemundo had the opening that I wanted, the job that I wanted, right? When that came about, they called me, and I couldn't have been happier. I left, I left in great terms. The company knew, everybody knew that I wanted to stay. And I think they wanted me to stay too. It just, the role wasn't there yet. And maybe the timing wasn't, perfect. And now it is. So I think it's a little bit of both, right? Like a little bit of you doing the right by, your career, you doing the right thing, working hard, and then timing just working, like the universe just aligning.
Yeah. Now a quick summary is a lot about what you've done to that. Is your career is very organic, and if you do the right things and treat people well, the opportunities will present themselves. And you just explained it perfectly.
I truly believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great story. So I actually forgot about Gabby Martinez. What was Gabby's last name? Nunez. So she was PR. Eva came in to help. Then Gabby got pregnant. Eva took it on. And then Gabby just left to be a stay-at-home mom. So now I have to ask you, did you guys work that out? Like, she's like, if I go to stay at home, can you come back? Because the timing was it was perfect. It was perfect.
Yes. Again, one of those things, like we couldn't have planned it. It happened. And it also allowed me to do some, like I said, launch a professional team. Had I stayed, had the job been there for me, I wouldn't have come back with a mega event to see how the NFL worked from that perspective that I had. Oh my God, right? I learned so much, and then to launch a team, to go through everything that we had to do, with COVID in that role versus having maybe stayed here. I think the growth and what I came back with, like what I was able to now offer, really kind of positioned me in honestly, I think it was best for me, because I came back at a level that I don't think I necessarily had. Yes, I did great work and I worked really well with everybody, but I'm not the same person now, right? So I think for the company, for me. It all worked out well. I'm giving more to Telemundo, and I think Telemundo now is able to give me what I wanted and more back that they couldn't give me back then.
Yeah. No, I think it was great. Tony had a great way of encapsulating what you said, and you did the same, which is stay true to yourself, work hard. And it was interesting how you say, like, you came back a different person. I think the other thing we know, and it's important to look inside a lot, is how you're changing during your career and what is going to make you happy and what do you want. So,
like I said, you don't really get to talk to like folks like you, right? And that have really no other agenda but to help and mentor, which again, I love that you're doing this. And so, and it's not just a question for me. I think everybody kind of gets to a point in their career where your job or your role shifts a little bit, and it becomes a bit more political. It becomes a bit more about talent development. It becomes a bit more of like in order to advance and grow. It's not about like hustling and getting it done. And like success is no longer measured by your results necessarily, but it becomes a bigger part of everything that you do. So like in your experience, like when did that happen? Because I feel like it's happening for me right now, where I'm senior enough where I need to be shifting the way I do things. But I'm not there yet where I can fully focus on the management and on like honing in my management style and leadership style. So I'm kind of in this middle ground. So what are your experience, your thoughts, when maybe you went through that time as well, or that shift in your career?
Where do you want to go
Go ahead.
first?
No, you go, Tom. I'm having a slight technical difficulty. I'm trying to manage through.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. So I think for me, it was always about, I think your inner voice tells you where you are in your career and should you sit a while or is it time to, continue to move? I think people that have something to bring to the party, if you will, continually want to involve, continually want to learn, and also keep observing that voice still has merit, right? It's still it's still a voice that people want to listen to, and that in many respects is about staying relevant, right? I always will tell folks, particularly as I got older, it's really not about your physical age; it's about your mental age and how you deal with things, and people relate to that. And when after the corporate days and after I did some producing on Broadway, I would teach at NYU in New York and advise students at Columbia. And the best compliment a student ever gave me as they handed in their exam is, thanks for just making it real, right? So, because they get a lot of people, I would always say, shoot me if I start to become a caricature of myself, and you just keep talking about old stories and old people, but just keep evolving and being smart about it. So I think and I think if you're starting to ask those questions on a personal level, in a way, it's your inner voice talking to you saying it's time to do the next thing, right? Um, and uh, and then sort of going back to the opportunity, when I was again at Anheuser-Busch, I'd been there 8 years, and my boss was local, very well respected in the industry. And a broadcast network called me and said, "Hey, why don't you come back to New York and interview for this job? No promise." And I just felt that my job, as great as it wasn't going anywhere after 8 years. So opportunity needed to be looked at somewhere else. I told my boss, I think I'm going to go to New York as a small business and least interview. He said, wait 24 hours. This is a true story. 24 hours later, he resigned to go to Coca-Cola to be their global media and sports marketing executive. And I got his job and worked the next 17 years continuing it. But so the opportunity opened up, unbeknownst to me, at the corporation I worked at, when my internal voice was saying, okay, you can do more and may not be here, so you better start thinking about seeking it at other places. So I'll pass it back to Ray here so I don't filibuster here too much.
So Tony, why don't you ask a question now? Um, yeah, I think I think you have to really. I mean, one of the great things about commuting for me, getting on a train every day, was I always had an hour both ways to think about a lot of different things that weren't just like, tactical. They were more strategic. And so I do think you have to know yourself and you have to work. To Tony's point about staying relevant, I mean, one of the reasons we're here and why we're not doing, two boomers, is we don't need two boomers talking to each other on a podcast. We said really to make it fun, relevant, to give back, to learn would be to always have a co-host, guest, but to co-host because you're carrying a part of the show with what you're doing here. And so I think that's really what it's about. I really do. I think it's about knowing what you want, where you want, knowing that you don't control everything. And by the way, the 24-hour rule. I mean, anytime you're doing something really heavy, in life, I would love to get away from just pure business. Um, Put it in a drawer for 24 hours. Put it in a drawer and look at it again, and then decide if you feel the same way. Because the heat of the moment will distract you and lead you down a different path. All the emotions that could be coming, joy, anger. I mean, I just took my grandson yesterday to see Inside Out 2. He's a little too young for it. But it's a movie about emotions. It's anger, sadness, frustration, disgust. I mean, it's just all of those things can be there in a moment. And we talked about McCartney and Willie Mays. Life just moves on. It's constantly. It's like a river. You can never step in the same river twice, is what the Japanese say. It's always flowing. Watch a leaf. It's gone. You can't. It's different. So give yourself time and space when big decisions are in front of you. If you're really angry about something, or your boss said really ticked you off, just let it rest.
I feel like so much of it now is at this point in my career is emotional intelligence too, right? Because it's not just about doing a good job. The skills that I think are more important now are those like emotional intelligence, like being, more political, right? Like knowing when to fight for something, when not to. Understanding timing could be everything. So, when we met in 2018, Ray, like I was very passionate and go-getter but 2022, I did come back a little bit different and it's a big part of growth and like you said, like being able to reflect and being more intentional.
You were so passionate and you were still a go-getter, but I think you had like softened the edges a little bit.
Right? Exactly. Right.
No, that's
right.
what the time did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have another question? I know you said we probably have time.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay. Well, we can talk about. We talked about being relevant already. So, because one of my questions is going to be technology and like the role that it plays in your career development, in growth. But I think we touched on that already. Let's see, management styles, right? And how do you kind of develop that? What's kind of the work that you yourself did in order to go from the director, maybe more a tactical role, right, to a role where you're managing, developing, investing in people as part of the day-to-day?
Yeah, I think what's really important, some people say they have an open door policy, but the door may be open, but once you walk in the door, there's nothing open about it, right? That the person, so it's I think as a leader and a manager, it's really about providing a comfortable and honest environment that people can express themselves, that your people that you work with, it really should be structured as a team. We're all in this together to win. If we do something bad, it's not anyone's fault. It's all of our faults. And making people really feel they're part of something. And they feel it right away. people observe, and even when you don't think they're observing, and I used to, one little aside was when I would have, say, 20 people at a dinner party, whatever, or at a restaurant, I would sit, let's say it's a long table, I would sit in the middle and see who dared to sit next to me. That's right. And then I would watch the people who went to the far end, which is I'm not getting near Tony because all I'll do is then screw it up, versus the person they said, no, this is an opportunity to sit next to the boss, if you will, and have him get to know me better. And so it's a little bit, and I want to interject, but I do want to prolong. The other thing is, I think in a career, smart risk is key. You have to take a risk in order to make things move forward. If you play prevent defense using a sports term, you will lose, right? So you always have to stay offensive and maybe what looks like a little risk, but that's where the bigger opportunities will be, whatever that may be. Me being a New York agency person, going to St. Louis, Missouri to go work for a beer company that was not the Anheuser-Busch of today. Ray, who was an ABC sports salesperson, who left to go to Charlotte, North Carolina to work for a syndicated company called Raycom. Those are risk moves. And what people should always realize is that you can always return back to the risk you took. In other words, if you make that leap and in a year or two you go, what was I thinking? Okay, you learned something, you built on your foundation, but I'm going to go back to something else. But you never want to play it so safe that you don't know what that risk leap may have provided to you. For both Ray and I, speaking for him, it became career enhancers. Didn't know it at the time, but if we didn't do it, our careers would have been something else. Right?
Right.
Yes, agreed. So I think Tony and I are very similar in many ways, and not in others. One of the things we realized once is like when we were getting from A to Z, Tony's like, I'm fine from going from A to Z, and I don't really care about B to Y. And I'm like, I need to know every one of them. So it's to be different styles. But I think we're totally in agreement about teamwork. We succeed together. It's sports. Like we win together, we lose together. I think you saw that. And an environment of people who will tell you the truth, an environment of trust, and nobody gets in trouble for, no surprises, right? Just no surprises. And if you're going to get a surprise and it's not a good one, you have a very short time to make an impression. Otherwise, you're kind of like beating somebody up, and that'll ring through the corridors. The slamming door, the slamming table, whatever happens. So a lot of it is just about time and maturity and more life, and how you want to lead. I mean, leadership, in my opinion, is not taught. It's organic. It just comes from doing.
Okay. Well, yeah. That's great. And I think I remember when you just said no surprises, it was like deja. I remember you said that before in a meeting, probably. Yeah, it just quickly just took me to, I think maybe even 2018. So yeah, thank you. And I know we were probably running out of time. And this was something that I did not tell you I was going to do, but I'd like to show something, and you can read it. But when I think of management and I think of like some of those moments that made a difference in my life, one of them was when I got back to my desk and found this note. Oh, let's see if you can see it. Let's see there. This note. Oh, well, it's a note from Steve Burke to Ray saying, "Great article in the perfect newspaper and the city." Signed, Steve Burke. Ray had gone and left his office, went to find me, didn't find me, and left it on my desk. And that was like, okay. And I was drowning in work at that time, I remember. This was 2018, Ray. And
I remember the article.
Those are like the little things that, those little moments of like the management style, right? And it was weird for me because I was reporting. You were kind of like the client, but I also had the head of PR. So navigating that was difficult. But you took it upon yourself to go and share that, and that was huge. So thank you for that, Ray. I thought it was a good point or a good thing to bring up because of the conversation we're having, right?
Yeah, it was a Wall Street. I think it was a Wall Street Journal article that you had teed up and prepped me for.
Yeah.
It landed perfectly. I mean, perfect.
Yeah.
So, it was very
and right. So but the fact that you brought it to me, I would have never seen it. There was absolutely no reason for me to, I could have never seen it, right? Like, but I did. So that's, and I kept it. I took a picture of it, and I've kept it since.
Good.
Thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
So Eva, I'm going to let Ray wrap it up with you, but I just want to say thank you. Everything Ray said about you obviously was true. You're an impressive person, and most importantly, we appreciate the time you took to sort of expose yourself, your background, and hopefully educate our listeners and viewers. And appreciate it very much. Ray,
yes,
back to you.
Bring it home. No, so Eva, as you know, it was great. It was great to have you. I hope that there were some things that you take away from it, and I hope that our audience does too. That kind of explain the journey, help with the journey, realize how little of the journey we control, but we control ourselves. We control who we are, how we present. All the things you said were spot on, and it gives me great confidence that you're going to have a great further career. You've already had a great one, but you got it all there. So
got the other half.
Yeah, it was really
more to come.
Really having you on today's podcast. So this one's going to drop quickly. This comes out on June 25th. So
amazing. Well, thank you.
Busy over the weekend. All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. See ya.